So welcome to the October 17th, 2023 St. Mary's City Commission regular meeting. If you would like to speak, I just say this at the beginning of every meeting, we invite you to do so, but please come to the podium. Let us know if you are a resident of the city, and then please keep your comments clear, concise, and courteous. That's what we ask. Thank you. First thing you want to look at is appropriation ordinance number 1216, which we saw electronically. I suppose it's up here somewhere. Yeah.
That's asphalt, Maurice?
No, that's for patch, asphalt, hot mix.
Did they do the work?
No.
You just bought it from them? Maurice, my son works for Bettis Construction, but I don't think that, since they didn't do the work, I don't think we have any issues.
So that workshop, is that the GIS, is that the accounting software you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's our annual license fee for, we call it G-Works, but it's bought by a company called Simple City. I'm not sure why it shows up as GIS Workshop LLC, but unless they change their name again.
And then the other thing that we put is it the 2675 for Microcom? That's that agreement that we.
That annual agreement that will take a look at our equipment.
All right. Any questions or concerns about that?
Where was the tree removal done?
That was a couple of trees. I'm not sure if it has the addresses in here.
Mission,
Future burn. It's Jerry Eichel, I know it says Richard Hurdle on there, I don't know where it's at, I'll get it to you. It's on here, I just worked it today.
Anything else? Okay, do I have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1216 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, Richard. So that's approved. As presented. Proposed minutes in the packet. Richard, good? Nate?
Good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah,
Approved as presented.
approved as presented.
The trees were at 209 Mission, and they were over power lines. There's two large hackberries.
Okay, do we have anything to add to the agenda?
yes.
Um,
Sixth Street curb and gutter sidewalk.
Oh, that post office?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be item G, golf.
Yeah.
Golf, how about the begin and end? All right. So the first item of business, golf course. We left off last time with, we had a work session last time, and Rick from Great Life gave us some information, and we left off with a question about seating, and then Gerard, I think you wanted this back on the agenda.
Yeah, it did, I did say I wanted to vote, but what I wanted to do is, because since the last meeting, I think more questions, well, in my mind, more questions than answers have come up. More questions than answers to the original questions have come up. But I still would like to know, I'd like to get a feel, I mean, do we want to move forward with looking into issuing bonds and what that takes and what kind of, I'd like to know what kind of timeline we're looking at for that.
1 to 6 months, this project probably 2 months.
2 months. I was hoping that Rick would be able to come back. He had a prior engagement, so he couldn't come tonight. But I do want to, I want to see if we're going to move forward with this and kind of get a feeling from the commissioners as a whole, if this is something that we actually, are we going to pursue this all the way? Is there some, or is it just something we're just going to keep talking about for the next 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then not do anything on it? That's kind of what I'd like to see, is kind of get the feel of everybody on which direction we would want to head in this project.
Richard, did you?
Well, I guess I did a lot of thinking about it, and my take on it was, you know, right now we're kind of struggling to get the streets thing fixed with the C-clip. And I guess we would say the same, maybe even going with these ideas of the, you know, repairs that we were thinking of doing for water supply lines and even, you know, refurbishing the
Sewer plant?
plant as well. And those, you know, right now we're being told by Adcox that we can't get, you know, low-income loans. The government's not issuing them, it seems like. And I don't know, I guess in my opinion, you know, I'm not sure that it's the right time to, you know, then go ahead and pursue a loan for something that's, you know, maybe you might say not directly city business in the sense. I guess I just have a little apprehension about going forward with taking out a loan for the golf course when we're not getting the listings.
Dean or Chuck?
Yes, actually, Mr. Mayor, I had the opportunity this past week to go visit the Great Lake course in North Topeka, and I met with Rick. I was able to ask a bunch of questions, and I wanted to start this off by saying that I'm actually absolutely for getting the golf course renovated and turn it into a family environment type thing, which is why we pursued Great Lake. I will say I had my reservations about the city going into debt on it, but again, I really do believe that this would be a great asset for the community to have, especially, you know, if it's something that it's not specifically designed just for golfers. You know, if we put Top Tracer and the putting course in there and including the pickleball course, I mean, this could be open up to people that aren't just golfers. That being said, you know, a few questions that I asked Rick, you know, if he could give me some solid answers on. One, he said that the projected expenses for the golf course would be about $200,000 a year. currently, within the 10-mile radius, we have about 100 people, 100 memberships that would go automatically to the city of St. Mary's. The average, they have 3 different levels, actually have 4, but the three levels of membership they have is $45, $55, and $65. So on average, about $50 per membership per month. So currently at 100, you're looking at, that's what, 60,000 right there. You know, if we can get that membership up to 166, that would be 100 grand right there a month, that just off of memberships alone. He said that Top Tracer actually has brought in about a third of the revenue, the gross revenue for the golf course he has there in North Topeka. What else? Some things that I've asked Maurice to look into, you know, a way to help minimize the debt. And my goal would be not only to minimize it, but not have the city have any of it, but we're currently looking into a grant that, from my understanding, is something that this project would qualify for. Now, we still need to go through the process and see if we're actually awarded that. Again, to my understanding, we can't apply for that until February of next year, this coming year. And then we wouldn't find out until maybe August if we were awarded that. And the grant would pay for up to 50% of the expenses of the project. And then what I would like to see us do is, you know, perhaps solicit, you know, entities like Cobb Valley Chamber of Commerce to see if they would be willing to do some sort of fundraiser or something like that to help cover the other portion of that, or at least a good amount of that, of the remainder of the project. Because I do feel, you know, if we do get $1 million, so we get $1 million bond or something like that, we would be paying about $100,000 a year. And I do have a tough time believing that, you know, the golf course would actually make enough profit to cover $83,000 or $8,300 a month. But if we can minimize that upfront cost by, hey, getting the grant, qualifying for the grant, and then seeing if there's other opportunities, whether there's businesses that would like to donate to that or private individuals. But again, you know, I think this would be an awesome project for Cobb Valley. I know they had a special division within the commerce that was, hey, let's see what we can do to bring more business to St. Mary's and what have you. So, and I would say I had in my mind what Top Tracer was, and when I actually went and saw the facility, it was a lot more. I'm not a golfer. Probably in the past 5 years I've played golf 12 times maybe, but that was a lot of fun. Top Tracer, I think that's something that, you know, businesses would utilize to do company outings, you know, a lot of different things. So they could bring in a lot of outside money to St. Mary's. And that's all that I had for this. That's what I found out this weekend.
So if he said it costs $200,000 a year to run, and I mean, I can say
So
more about.
that includes his management fee too.
Okay, but then let's just assume that that's accurate. I'd be curious to know exactly what that entails. I'll say more in a second, but. And then if you add 100,000, if you add the vehicle, then that's actually. Yeah.
For the city, yes.
300,000.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
sorry.
one more. Well, yeah, so a point that I did clarify with him too. I said, so if you grossed sales $200,000, does that mean you're breaking even? For him, yes, that is, and he's only making 4% off of gross sales, which for him, he'd only make $8,000 a year. Now, that's why let's see if we can get the grant and then figure out ways to either fundraise for the other portion of it or get that down to a much smaller number. You know, I don't think Rick would be in the business to just break even on that and get paid $8,000 a year. So, but those are my thoughts, that's what I found, and that's what I wanted to share with everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I actually like that plan, honestly. I'm in favor of looking into this. I agree with essentially everything you say there, Chuck. I don't see a harm in doing this right. We have more knowledge, I think, than we did going into this. And, you know, Maurice, I know you alluded to some pretty big numbers potentially on the grant, you know, that they've given out historically. I'd be really interested in seeing that. I mean, at this point, even if we were ready to move forward with Great Life tonight, which we're not, I don't think, realistically, the course isn't going to be open until August of next year, and you have 2-3 months to get something out of that year. So I don't see a problem going for the grant. That this would be my proposal, is to go for the grant in February. I think look into what you suggested, Chuck, and maybe by the time we get an answer on the grant in August, I mean, who knows, between any efforts we made on the side, the grant, it could be substantially lower for the cost to actually make those improvements, and then at that point, a much lower loan. And I agree with you, I don't think Rick would sign up to make $8,000 a year. I mean, I'm sure he has plans to go higher than that, and I think he could do it. So I am in favor of pursuing this further, but I think doing it right is the prudent thing to do, and I think we have a path to do that and to see what we have. So I would be in favor of something like that at this point, but I am in favor of seeing if this is feasible. I think it would be a great thing for the community.
Jonathan,
Am I allowed to come speak?
as long as you're clear, concise.
Try to be all of the above.
Feel free from.
John Horton from the city of St. Mary's. So I would just like to give a little bit of insight, at least in my experience with the golf course and kind of some of the history with it. And also ask a couple of questions if you'll oblige me. So there is a long history to this discussion, and I think Maurice has done a really good job of kind of assembling that. I hope everybody's read that. It's a long-standing discussion. I did hear a little bit of talk about where the money would come from to fund the golf course. Whenever we talk about grants, I think there's a tendency to talk about the grant money and to, in the beginning, gloss over the requirements or the obligations of the grant. If everyone's familiar with the current obligation that's on the property there, it's a obligation in perpetuity, and it has been something that has been not a help but a hindrance to getting that golf course over the years to be able to do something with it that would actually be a benefit to the city, be a benefit to the budget and not a drain on the budget. So for many years, we were funding it to the tune of $30,000 a year, maybe even more in some years. Without that grant, without that restriction, other things could have been put up there along with the golf course that would have allowed it to be something that wouldn't have drained the city budget for $30,000 a year. That was something that the guys that signed up for that grant 40 years ago didn't have the foresight to see. And
Like what? What could be put up there if you didn't have that grant?
there were a number of proposals that we got, I don't know, 3 years ago about different things, batting cages, being able to lease it for using it for other purposes, but the grant says that it has to be used for outdoor recreation, if I'm not mistaken.
So batting cages wouldn't fall under that outdoor recreation?
There were
I mean,
a number of other things.
Curious as to what the other things were that people wanted to put up there that were not considered outdoor recreation.
Well, for instance, expanding the clubhouse to make it a little bit bigger where you could rent it out, right? So you can't do that without approval from the grant agency.
There's also an idea of having a structure up there that you could have a turf inside, so you could have sports practices in there, and that sort of stuff, you know. There's also talk about putting cabins up there that would let people rent them and have a golf weekend, that sort of stuff, and then, that sort of stuff. So there were some ideas out there, but, yeah, they're just ideas.
So that would be something I would encourage everybody to do, is to consider the downside of any grants that you might apply for. I think, again, grants always sound great, and they sound like free money, but nothing's free.
All I'd say is the grant that, Rick Meany had you look into is the exact same grant that they did in the 70s, has the same restrictions, so there wouldn't be a new restriction, it would just be in perpetuity, which is already on there. It's the same land and water conservation grant that is already on that property is what the one that he was talking about tonight to apply for would be on there, so there wouldn't be any new restrictions.
Believe me, I'd rather get rid of that grant than, because that property's held hostage for $3,400 right now. It's like, if we could get rid of that.
It's definitely held hostage.
But, hey, if we can qualify for the same grant and use it for something,
Well,
the same restrictions.
I don't mean to cut you off, John Paul, but I want to interject one thing about the grant. I never have been, and I never will be in favor of a government grant. I'm not gonna ask somebody in Nashville, Tennessee, or Portland, Oregon, or Minneapolis to pay for our golf course. So, I mean, it's a good idea, if you wanna look at it, you can, but you won't, I will not ever back a government grant. Now, if it's a private grant from a private organization, I'm all for it, but I will never endorse a government grant.
You took my second point, thank you.
Sorry.
So the other things that I think are really important just to consider here. So the talk on the golf course has always been that if we fix it up, we can make it nice, we can take the proceeds and we can then pay for whatever we spent to fix it up. And theoretically it's possible. I'm not at all saying that it's not. I'm saying I will say, in my opinion, that it is unlikely. And so the reason I say that, and I would also then just ask a couple questions here, but the reason I say that, I did some research and I did some more this week on other cities who have contracted with Great Life to do this. And I hope my comments don't come off at all demeaning to Great Life. Great Life is there to operate on a profit. I understand what they're all about, and I think they do a good job at it. The other cities that I've seen contract with Great Life, if you go into their financial statements, which I did, and you look at their financial statements and their golf course fund, the golf course fund always looks positive. But there's one giant line item in the golf course fund in every one of those cities, and that's a distribution from the general fund, or in some cases from the electrical fund, or some other random fund to fund that golf course. And the ones I looked at for this week, the range was somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 a year, coming from the general fund into the golf course fund to help pay for the gap in the cost to run the course versus the revenues that they get from it. Now, I looked at 4. There might be 200, maybe I picked the 4 out of the 200 that are the bad ones. But I would really encourage everybody to do the same exercise, because if you haven't looked at it and you haven't got the data, I think there's really a question mark in my mind about whether it could actually generate proceeds to pay for that loan or whatever is done to fix up the course. The other things that I looked at when I was considering that, just population size. If you look at those cities that have done it, the ones that I looked at were ranged somewhere between 4,000 and 12,000 population. There was a decided shift as the population got higher, the revenue that the golf course brought in got higher. Makes sense. There's more people to use it, and you know, as you get closer to population centers, I think you get more crossover between communities using that kind of stuff. We would be on the lower end of that. So the revenue that you quoted of the golf course bringing in about $200,000 a year, It seems.
That was his expense, so that's,
Oh, I'm
it
sorry,
wasn't
I'm sorry. I thought I
revenue,
heard
that
you.
was strict expense.
Okay. So that was
On the high end.
generally about what I saw for communities our size as the revenue number, 200 to 250.
But how would Great Life make any profit if all they did was gross
I think
$200,000?
you would have to explain that to me. The agreement with them,
That was the question that I asked Rick today was, hey, if you only gross 200,000 in sales, you're breaking even. And he goes, yes, and that would stink for
so the agreements that I saw with the other cities were pay Great Life
I
to
like
run
what
it,
you're
a
saying
certain
about
flat
that.
fee. And then if the proceeds go above a certain amount, pay them a percentage of those proceeds. If you have a different agreement that you're looking at with them, that may totally be invalid. But generally, I think that's the way they structure it, is here's how much you'll pay us to run it as a flat fee, and then if we get above a certain amount, then you give us a percentage of that.
So it's 4% on gross sales, and then it's 50% split on net profit. So that was one of the questions I specifically asked them, like, okay, so your budget is $200,000. You hit $200,000, you're just breaking even. We would have to, or out of that would be 4%, which is $8,000.
Well, could I just, I wanted to hold off on making detailed comments on this draft, right? I know it's a
Sure,
draft
sure.
agreement, but the way I read it, it might cost $200,000, but I see that we're footing most of that bill, because completely opposed to what I understood we wanted to do. It says in here, which wouldn't necessarily be the final thing, that the people running the golf course would be city employees. So if that's part of their cost,
No.
then we're paying that.
When I've talked to Rick about that particular thing, he assured me that no, all employees would be employees of Great Life.
The date on there is wrong too.
Yeah,
so
and-
it's
but-
like-
There's a lot of
there are
things
a lot
in
of
that.
problems in that,
There's a
so
lot
I
of
just,
problems in that contract.
but I'm just saying that we have to, and we'll let you go on it. I'm sorry, I wanted to wait.
Well, I wanna
summarize.
Before, if you don't mind, before you go on, one of the things I wanna say in regards to how this is a unique situation in the fact that you're dealing with the aspect of Top Tracer Golf. I don't know if you know what Top Tracer Golf is, or how it is. I mean, we could not use, if we were to refurbish that golf course, we wouldn't be able to get a Top Tracer license to run their equipment, because Great Life has, I think they have they're the only ones that can do it, the sole rights to it. If they did not have Top Tracer, Rick would have probably hung up on me the first time I talked to him, because that is where the revenue, the difference between St. Mary's would be in any other course aside from Topeka North, is the Top Tracer aspect. It's not something that you can't say that if they have a golf course in a certain town, that golf course doesn't have Top Tracer, so they're not gonna generate that kind of revenue that Top Tracer has shown to generate. And it is a very unique aspect of the entire family fun that they wanna put together. I too went and spent some time and talked to people that were there playing, who never pick up a golf club, but they play Top Tracer, so go ahead, continue.
No, and you're absolutely right. So the last thing I was gonna add is when we did kind of have the last version of this discussion a couple years ago, I also kind of reached out to a couple cities that had used Great Life, and the feedback I got from the cities was overwhelmingly positive. But the one piece that I was never comfortable with, and the one question I always ended the conversation with was, so how much do you have to fund it from your general fund? And it was always a large number. I mean, it was always a good portion of the operating expenses of the course came from the general fund or from whatever fund. My only request, I guess, really in all this is again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Theoretically, all of what you're saying makes sense. Like, it could turn a profit, it could be made to be a nice course, it could be an asset to the community, but an asset generally means positive in terms of dollars. And I think that there really needs to be some research and some hard numbers put to what that means before you make a decision to to either apply for grants or take out, bonds or anything like that. I think that there has to be more effort put towards the hard numbers of what is realistic as an expectation for what this could make. And let's do the full math all the way through the P&L to say, what does that mean in terms of profit? What does Great Life get out of this? What do we get out of this? And is it positive? And is that of the range of scenarios, is that in the 50% probable range or the 100% probable range? I think that, again, my experience with it is that it's definitely possible, and it's not very probable. And I would ask that before you put another tax obligation on the city residents, that you feel that it's highly probable that it's gonna turn profit. Again, I'll leave with, Maurice put together a really, really good history of the golf course. And I read that, I think it was the first thing I read when I started on the city commission. And this discussion, meaning no disrespect to you guys or anybody that served with me on the commission, you could take any page out of that history, cut and paste the names and insert your own, and I
did that
think
last
you'll see
meeting, actually.
that it's the
Or
same
maybe it was 2
discussion.
meetings ago.
And that was where I ended up. So thank you for that.
Before you leave, I've got a question for you. I'd like your input on this. We haven't been on the commission. If we do nothing, well, first of all, I do want to say, I think when we started this conversation back in December, or January, or I don't know when I put it on the agenda, January, maybe February, I think we've all been consistent, all 5 of us, in stating that we do not want to see anybody's taxes raised because of this. We don't want to take from the general fund because of it. We want to find a way to not have to do that. But, and so I will challenge you with the same question that I challenge anybody that I have this conversation with. If not a golf course, then if not, what do we do with that land? What do we do with those buildings that are falling apart? What do we do with anything in there that could hurt somebody? What do we do with that land? What do we do with it?
If you're putting that question to me not as a rhetorical question, but an actual question,
Actual
I would say that, maybe I'm in the minority, but I get a lot of use out of that property the way it is right now as an outdoor space. I go up there and I run in the Patriot Run every summer. My kids go ride their bikes up there. I know a number of other people who run or walk or just enjoy that space up there because it's a beautiful piece of property. I don't see a problem with it simply as an outdoor space. In the event that we could come up with some other use for it that isn't a tax burden to the city, I would be all for that. I just don't think a golf course is that answer.
How could it be an outdoor space without costing? It would still cost the taxpayers to upkeep it. It would cost the taxpayers to get rid of those buildings. It would cost the taxpayers to keep the trails where your kids ride. I assume they ride on the paths, or I don't know, maybe they are right in the grass. But there's always a cost involved. If that's all it's going to be is an outdoor park, that's fine. If that's ultimately how it ends up, but there's always gonna be a cost involved there.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be a big cost involved with getting rid. If we're not gonna use those buildings, we've got to get rid of them, in my opinion, because they're just gonna keep going downhill and downhill and downhill until you have animals living in them, or who knows what else. But thank you, though. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
One quick question, when you looked at the different cities that Great Life is using, that line item that you said that they were taking from, was that to pay for expenses, or was that to pay?
It was to make their golf course fund solvent. So without that line item, the golf course fund would be a negative, and you can't run a negative, budget.
So how is Great Life making a profit off of that, is what?
Because I think you pay them on the revenues, not on the profit.
Okay, but if the city, or if it only makes $200,000, like, it's not gonna make him any profit. And I would like to,
That would be my question to you. It should be in your contract. That
It
would.
is in the contract, but
If he's only getting 4% off of $200,000,
It's not much money.
But
it's
as I
not worth
said,
their time.
as I said before though, this
that
contract,
needs to be clarified, yeah.
this contract says that the expensive stuff, personnel, upkeep, equipment, as far as I can gather, we pay for that. So if that's the way it rolls, then what that means is we guarantee pay them 4% of whatever. And then all those other costs, we have to pay for. But I don't know what the contract would be, but that's how I would explain that.
Maurice, in our dealings with Rick over the last few, aside from the lawnmower or two that he wanted us to purchase, has he ever given you or Bobby any indication that anything would be paid for by the city?
He said it could be structured any way you want it to be structured. So it could be city provide the employees, they provide the employees. I know he has intention of providing employees because I discussed health insurance with him and he said his health insurance was similar to our costs. So it's out there. It's not on the paper maybe, but we've discussed a lot of different options.
I think we have this particular agreement that he has sent us, this contract is just, it's an outline, it's not set in stone. I mean, we can make our changes to it on what we think, should or should not be in it.
Right, so, thank you, John Paul. You started this, Trevor, by saying there are more questions than answers, and we have proven that. And so we can't, it doesn't do us any good to guess at what the answers might be.
No, absolutely.
The consensus of what I'm hearing universally is we need more information before we can make a prudent decision. We need more time. If we're even gonna consider the grant, that's already a timeline that's been defined for us. So any idea of seeding the greens, if looking at grant money is something we need to do, doesn't make any sense in fall. So I just want to go through what everyone said and for the moment give my thoughts on them. I think the question of looking into how we might fund it, that's one part of the question. Grant might be possible, some kind of bond might be possible, some donations might be possible. Okay, we need to answer those questions. What's the art of the possible there? I mean, I know that, I'm sure we're all the same, we don't decide to buy something until we see what the terms are in the loan if we need to take out a loan. So we couldn't possibly make a decision about what if we want to do something without knowing what the cost is gonna be. I agree with Richard on priorities for what I would call critical infrastructure questions. I'm not personally too worried about water and sewer because they're utilities. So, I mean, I'm concerned about the rates, but I'm not concerned about taxes there. What I am concerned about, I said it before and I'll say it again, is personnel. And we have an open personnel cost because we know if we want to pay our employees at a level that's been recommended by the contractor we hired and gave compelling arguments, we know we need to find $94,000 as a minimum somewhere. But that is general fund. Now, we hired someone else to look into health insurance, which maybe we'll actually make money on that, but again, that's a time thing, we don't know yet. So I think we need to know that answer. And the roads definitely do come out of the general fund. And when we're looking at having to put volunteers together to put a sidewalk in front of a post office because we are concerned about that money, I think we need to, that's a higher priority for me than the golf course, and given that we don't know whether or not we'd have to spend extra money on that. I'm interested in the question of, so I guess all the rest of it could be, general numbers aren't helpful to us at this point. So if we say, are we just gonna talk about this for another however many months and not do anything? So no, but I think what we need to do is, as I suggested from the beginning, and I don't know who does this, but we need, no kidding, we need to define the requirement. What do we want for the city? What do we want? What are our parameters? What are our constraints and our restraints? When we started this, we said there will be no increase in taxes. If that's a constraint, that's a constraint. That's gotta be, we cannot go beyond that. And just walk through, instead of generally, I think it might make about 200,000, or I think it might cost. Okay, and what are those costs? And what actually is the contract? Because having read through this in depth, there's no way that I think any of us would sign this as it stands. if only because it's for the state of Florida, but I understand it's a template. But the personnel cost was a total shock to me. So again, it's just a question to answer. I'm not saying and therefore no, I'm saying and therefore we need more information. So that's the bottom line, which I understand everyone is saying in one way or another. But I don't want that to seem like, nope, we're not doing it. Almost, I think everyone who has spoken about this has said, it would be great if. And so then we just need to see if that's possible. I would also say, I was thinking about the fact, and Francis sent in an email that echoed, at least part of it echoed something I was thinking. It's taken us a few meetings to get through the sending out a bid for the trash contract, and I think that's fine. But I mean, it seems to be, once we have defined our requirements, our constraints, our restraints, I think we need to bid it.
Who else can offer?
I don't know.
Nobody.
Well, I don't know, but I'm not gonna say, personally, I am clueless enough to say, I don't know. And until we at least give people the opportunity, we won't know, for sure.
If we were to bid it, Matthew, I would be pleasantly surprised if we got any responses.
Yeah. Well,
Because a golf course, a golf course, standalone golf course by itself, I agree with John Paul, it's not gonna make it here. I mean, the city has proven that for a number of years, that it's just not going to make it just by itself, a standalone golf course. I encourage people to really look into this Top Tracer technology, and if that is our only option, is Great Life with Top Tracer, I don't think, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anybody else that can offer that.
Right,
Maybe
so
somebody
again,
from-
that's part of the question, is that we want these things, and just for example, I was thinking to myself, okay, well hey, pickleball, that's interesting, could we put a pickleball court over there in the park? Hey, miniature golf, could we put a miniature golf course over the park?
We had a miniature golf course.
Well,
They got destroyed. It was horrendous. It wasn't used. What do we want government to run and what do we want the private sector to run? In my opinion, 99 times out of 100, if you let the private sector run it, it's gonna be done a hell of a lot better than if you let
okay,
government.
and that's probably true, but if the private sector is only able to run it after the public sector invests $1 million and takes all of the risk, that sort of changes the calculus in my, all I'm saying is, part of our job is to define exactly what we want. And if it's a Top Tracer type thing tied to a golf course, because we're convinced that that's what's gonna break through, first of all, it would be on the part of the person who wants the contract to prove it. But I also don't know, and I don't, you've paid golf 12 times in 5 years.
How do you prove, so any business can come in and write a business plan, that doesn't mean anything because
You give
It's
some
not
kind of
things
a
they're gonna-
projection about, this costs this much, and this is the demographic, this is how much we're gonna charge, this is, the same thing they're doing, in the same way they're doing it. And so I don't know about Top Tracer, it sounds kind of cool, I wonder if there are other people, if it's cool and it makes money, probably other people are doing something like it, that would be my guess, but I don't know. But if we say, we want this thing on that space, and we define the requirements, we call that a request for maybe proposals, request for qualifications, yeah.
So you're probably gonna have trouble getting an apples to apples on the golf course, but what you could do is make it known that you're accepting proposals on how to use the land for outdoor recreation, and at the same time, follow this other path of going on the golf course.
Well, that's a
That way,
good, yeah.
we have all these weeks that we're carrying stuff over that people have a chance, and so that would take care of the letting anybody else, because there's not gonna be another equal to Great Life.
Well, that's true, that's a good point, which would simultaneously help us answer the other question, which is, if we can't make this work, what could we do with the space, which is an important question. I may be saying more than I need to, I think we all agree we have time, it would be imprudent and it's impossible to approve, there's nothing to approve. So I say we take advantage of that time, but I need to, how do we go beyond the, hey, this is a good idea, let's get some numbers. Who's tasked with doing this?
On what, the golf course?
How do we get actual numbers?
Well, so the first thing I think we need to do is just go into this contract and make it exactly how you want it, so that he is very certain on what he's gonna be responsible for, and then we'll see if that $200,000
But
number
my,
is still.
I would prefer not, see, all of this, it frustrates me a little bit because, I mean, not that I appreciate their showing us what the art of the possible is, but I think normally what you wanna do is say, this is what I want, these services. And can anyone do that? And you shop around and find it, rather than saying, hey, I'm just gonna talk to this one person, and then he's gonna give me his thing, and then I'm gonna tailor that, and I'm looking to just down that axis.
We can do both, we can shop around and tell him show him what we want in the contract, why can't we do both?
Well, I think we can, but I think step one is define generally exactly what our constraints are, and then that determines the contract.
What do you mean by our constraint?
Our constraints are, we will not raise taxes a dime. We will not be the employers of the people running the golf course. We will not do the maintenance, that sort of stuff, that's what I mean.
Okay, and I understand that, and I agree with you, and I think it's been said from day one, none of us, not that I've heard, I haven't heard any commissioner say they wanna raise taxes, regardless of what is spread on social media or out there about, property taxes going through the roof because of this. It's just not true, it's never been any of our intent to do that. And I will say again, I started this, the reason I brought this up was to have a golf course, but more importantly, get government out of it.
I agree.
And because we have proven over the years that we cannot run a golf course. I'm not criticizing employees, staff, anything like that, it's just not something that government
Right,
is good at.
which is reinforced by what, John Paul's, research. So that's precisely what I mean by constraints.
I remember
These are the
the
things-
years of agreeing to move money from the general fund to cover the cost of subsidizing the golf course, and I don't ever wanna go back to those days. But I just, what I wanna see us move forward with, I'm all about, generally speaking, I'm all for the bid process. Get as many people involved as you can. Again, I would be extremely surprised if there was any entity that could come in and do what Great Life can do. I would be shocked almost. There was a talk of Wildcat Creek over in Manhattan. I don't think they would touch this project because it just would not make them money, because apparently they cannot come in with cost rates. Now, maybe there's somebody in Kansas City, maybe there's somebody in St. Louis, a company that could come in and do all of those things. I don't know, and if the majority of the commission wants to go out and look for those, that would be great. I personally think it's a waste of our time. I think we should, if we're gonna pursue a contract with Great Life, I think we should make the contract look like you said, we don't want the responsibility of the personnel. We're not buying equipment, we're not upkeeping, this is all gonna be on them. And the one thing I did not get to say that I do wanna say, when I said, more questions than answers, part of me, I would like to see some numbers, some projections, and I understand where Rick is coming from in the fact that, a lot of it, I don't think he knows. I don't think he flat out knows exactly what kind of numbers they could come up with as far as revenue, as far as how much. And it would be kind of somewhat of a shot in the dark. And if that's what we're willing to do, then we move forward, but if that's not what we're willing to do as a commission, then we don't move forward.
Yeah, well, what would not, and this is why we have to look at the funding part in parallel. What is not a shot in the dark is how much it's gonna cost before they can come in and run it. That's not a shot in the dark. And if we get $100,000 a year loan payment, that's $100,000 a year.
Well, that's why I said I don't feel like if we have to get a loan for it, they couldn't make enough profit for us to cover that. That's why I suggest, hey, Cobb Valley Chamber of Commerce, let's see if we can
So if we can absolutely minimize our liability on the front end, then
Yeah.
then a shot in the
That's-
dark is maybe a little more reasonable, but, so I guess in terms of action for today, because I think,
I just have one, Marisa, when Great Life was approached years ago about this, or when the golf course was talked about years ago, was there anyone else other than Great Life that,
you gave me something from 2016.
Well, so in
The city-
2013, 2014 timeframe is 2013, there was a local group of people that formed a group that the commission actually went with.
And they ran it into the ground.
I'm not
no,
commenting
no,
on
they
it.
did.
I'm talking
Plain and
about
simple.
another entity like Great Life, a company that actually does golfing, have they,
I think it was Great Life.
No, so what happened was, one day I invited Great Life to a board meeting at the golf course. It did not go well with the folks. We got to a commission meeting, they were interested in it, started doing some stuff, and then a local group that was tied to the golf course, something like that, challenged them and won. As far as any other entity, we didn't solicit anybody, this just happened. That group formed by itself and lobbied the commission and got it. So I
so
don't
they
know,
didn't go to anyone else other than Great Life to see if it would work, or?
not officially, like I said, Great Life came here because of me. And then the group formed. So
Okay.
we didn't seek out other management companies because I wasn't aware of any.
So
That answers my question, thank you.
the things that we know that we need to do, it's not a dead topic at all. In fact, we need to intensify, I think, the research. We need to know for sure potential sources of money. And Chuck suggests the grant, I understand your position on that, but we can at least look into it. And then whatever bond situation, and if I don't know, maybe we could approach the Chamber of Commerce, see if they could be if they'd be interested in some kind of initiative. So that we could do that. I think we need to define, I don't know exactly how to do this, other than we individually, now that we've talked about this, put together our own ideas of exactly what we would be asking someone to provide. We already know what Great Life has talked about. Put that together such that we
Are you
could.
asking for a solicitation to compete against Great Life or just the general outdoor recreational use of that?
I'm talking general,
Okay.
because, again, you might be completely right, Gerard, these are the only guys who could do what you're talking about, but I just want to back off a step. Instead of saying, I have a solution, now what's the problem? I want to say, okay, precisely now that we've talked about it, precisely what do we actually want for the community? If that ends up being some combination of things that Great Life is the only way we could possibly do it, then maybe that's fine.
There was a solicitation put together after that first thing
Mm-hmm.
had its way, and there's a gentleman named Conkle who was here, and he had plans, and we were working on a lease agreement with him, it was gonna be 99 years, so there was another,
Relative to, so I think I don't think it hurts to back off just half a step here. We have something that could be done. We just need to define very clearly for ourselves what we really want to be done and what we're willing to do to get there. So
So we,
Go ahead.
just wanted, so we already sourced the public for this, so are we saying this survey was pointless and we're just gonna redo this again?
no, I'm not saying that. We put out a survey and 60% of the people who responded said they wanted a golf course. Some percentage of those people said they'd be willing to go into debt, but we did say on the survey that the golf course would pay for that. That was on the survey. So that was already at least that was the indication is the golf course would make enough money to pay for it. So no, what I'm saying is that taking what we've learned, which is there is interest in a golf course, then I think we need to define, okay, and what exactly do we want in that golf course?
So we're
And-
looking for someone to come with a golf course bid, not a outdoor public recreation space.
Well, I don't think it's a problem to broaden it out. So one of the things that we know that 60% of the people who responded to the survey want is a golf course. But we also know that if this is too expensive for us, we have to do something recreational with this land. So I think we could do both. I think.
I just want to be clear what you're saying.
I would like to see us, if you want to solicit it for other uses, I'm not opposed to that. However, I would like us to, if it means getting the city attorney involved, I want this contract the way that we would like it worded. And I think, Maurice, I think we know what we wanted to say. We've been talking about this long enough. Maybe I'm looking at this too simplistically, but we want, now the numbers, we may not have those yet, and I agree we don't, and that's one of the things I would like to see as much as anybody, our numbers, especially on the revenue side, but we want Great Life to come in, we want them to manage it, we want them to hire the employees, we want them to have all the equipment, and
So
for X number of years.
Right, I agree with everything you just said, except I'm hesitant to say we want Great Life to. We want a person to do it, because, and the reason I'm saying that is not because I've played golf 12 fewer times over the last 5 years than golf has. Gotten a chuck it.
Well, once
But
it's local.
yeah, it could be, it actually could
Make a
be.
pro out of you.
But I guess my thing is, I get the hair in the back of my neck starts to stand up a little bit when I'm saying already, I'm gonna go with that guy. That sounds wrong, and I think, we do need to ask, and
You can solicit that other folk, and at the same time, try to nail down exactly what Great Life would be agreeing to. And then when the other folks come in, if there is anyone else, we'll already have something to compare it to and see how it is. I don't see any harm, it won't take that long, it's 14 pages, allow this boilerplate to go in there and then have the city attorney review our proposed changes. And that would help him put together his actual, when he said $200,000,
It might change, yeah.
for the expenses, it could
yeah.
help clarify and.
I would point out that part of this, because I already kind of started doing that, going through and saying, one thing that I think we would be foolish not to ask for is, let me see your proposed first annual budget. Because that's a requirement of the deal. There's an annual budget every year, and they would have to do that before they can start by the contract. So that would be very helpful. What is your budget?
Yeah,
What are the line
agree.
items? So I think maybe we can do that. And the other question that I know I've already asked Maurice, and I'm just waiting to hear is, what are our legal obligations in this regard? Just because the hair on the back of my neck stands up doesn't mean it's illegal, but I'd like to know that.
What do you mean by our legal obligation? What do you?
Well, what I mean is, if we're looking to spend a lot of money, a lot of public money, and we're looking to enter an agreement with a private company who's gonna benefit from our action as a public body, I think that we shouldn't just choose ahead of time and give the contract.
Does leasing public property require others to have a chance to
Yeah, that's
lease the
my-
same public
yeah.
property?
I just don't know what the legal requirement is. My instinct tells me there probably is one, and that's why we have an attorney to find out.
It's on my,
So, anything else?
Yeah, one last statement, and this goes out to anybody that, I asked John Paul, I've asked other people I've had this conversation with. If not a golf course, what do we do with the land? I think the majority of the people of St. Mary's, the survey, in my eyes, it said it, there's nothing to do for people in St. Mary's. There's nothing to do. If you want to do anything other than go down to the park, maybe, play on the swing sets or hit some baseballs or softballs with your kids, you're going to Topeka, you're going to Manhattan. We have nothing for them here in St. Mary's. We've had some great businesses come into town. We've had some fantastic restaurants come into town, but we have nothing that anybody can do as far as recreation goes. And this is something, again, I think that they could provide, that it would not be a burden of the government to try and provide, because I don't believe that the government should be providing recreation. I mean, I'm all for city parks, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that we should be in the business of providing recreation. And this is something that we could do. But and I've said it from the beginning, I'm not in favor of those, taking money out of the general fund to pay for this.
So what I'm taking from this is to put together a solicitation for other uses, work on cleaning up the contract, and I think establishing a new timetable if two of them wanna pursue the grant and to see,
Right, so we need information on, I guess you kind of already got it, how we could do that.
somewhat, the numbers, the dates I gave him
And to confirm that there are no new strings attached.
is the same old string.
Well,
But
but
September.
I just wonder if now there's an additional cost attached to it, if somehow that changes the requirements for doing a land grant transfer.
Double secret probation. New timetable, I think that the grant award date is in September, I think I told August earlier, I do believe it's September.
Maurice, would you or city staff have the capability, or is this something you don't think that you guys could do, is to look into private grants as opposed to government grants?
We can see what's out there.
Yeah, but as you're looking into that, can you overlay it because of the current grant?
I don't know, if it's outdoor recreation, we could have the,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't see how they could, I don't think they would be object to that if we had a private organization. I mean, it's
Sponsorships.
really, there's not a lot of difference between that and asking the Chamber of Commerce to fundraise.
Yeah,
we can sell whole sponsorships, that sort of stuff, but, one thing that grant does prohibit is above ground power lines, so everything has to be buried. Can't have above ground power lines. But private grants, a new timetable that would incorporate public grant, look at the contract to clean it up, and then also work on a solicitation that would invite others to offer proposals either against Great Life or independent of Great Life.
The question I have, and maybe, I don't know if you can answer this, Maurice, if we do go down the road of issuing bonds,
Mhm.
and we ask, I'll just use round numbers here, we say we wanna issue $1 million in bonds,
Yep.
but then we are awarded some type of grant, be it government or private,
Can you pay them off early?
yes,
I don't know, there's probably a
Pay the grant off.
dozen different ways to,
can you take the grant money to pay off the bond?
probably not, only because that'd be paying for something that was already done, before they approved the grant. They have to have the proposal to review, to approve, and then you have 3 to 5 years to make it happen.
Yes, we just have to sequence these decisions based upon the information that we
The bonds, that's why we get the bond attorney, I'm not sure of all the nuances there. There's a handout I did provide.
Yes, I appreciate that.
One final thing, Maurice, where would any sales tax coming from the golf course, does that just go to the golf course fund or could that be applied to?
The sales tax would go to the state, and then they would give it back to us through our local and then county. Oh, that was another option, I know it would be unpopular, a sales tax referendum.
No, but I've had people, I had one comment, a person said, you wasted, how did they say, you wasted a lot of the sales tax money on lighting for a runway, why can't we use some of that sales tax money to pay for the golf course? I think they meant the street lights downtown.
Of lighting so people can drive down.
Yeah, I know, I told them it was needed.
All right, well, that was quick. I think we can go on to,
We have other things on the agenda.
I propose we go on to item B, board appointments. So you have thanks again, John Paul, 3 planning commission positions to expire. And those would be reappointments. And then, someone has applied, Daniel Motes has applied to take Patrick Murtha's position on the rec board to serve the rest of that, which is pretty much, it's until January 2027. I guess Patrick just started this past year there, his last term. So I don't, do we have any objections to these?
see who they are, I guess.
Yeah, so I'll just say, we have Jenna Jones for position number 3, Peter Armesto, position number 4, Andrew Bunnell, position number 5, currently already and are reapplying for those positions. So if there's no objection, I'll reappoint Jenna Jones to position number 3, Peter Armesto, position number 4, and Andrew Bunnell to position number 5 on the Planning Commission. All of them would have a term expiring on the 1st of November 2026.
No objection.
No objections?
No objection.
Okay, so I reappoint them as stated. Sure, that would be followed by a signature of something. Alright, and then the last would be Daniel Moats to fill the remainder of position 2 for Patrick Murtha, expiring January 1st, 2027. Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, so I appoint Daniel Moats to fill the remainder of that position number 2 on the rec board. Thank you. Sidewalk program. Now, Bob, is it all right, Maurice, if I just have him talk about sidewalk program and Sixth Street at the same time? I know you want to stay around to the end, but go ahead, please.
So, this 213 here was kind of a walk-in. He, would like to replace the sidewalks, it's on Palmer Street. And I took some pictures, I think you guys got the photos there. I think it qualifies for replacement, the way, you know. But he hasn't filled out an action form actually yet, but, you know, it was last Friday, Thursday or Friday, we could get the ball rolling, you know, and if he wants to go forward with it, then we can go forward with it.
Yeah, so if you approve it tonight and he doesn't submit it, then nothing happens, but if he does submit it, we can work with him to get it going.
But this would just be in front of 213.
Yeah, I think he's got a 75-foot lot there. A lot of more needs it.
It's the one that's for sale?
Yes, he just bought it.
Okay.
Has the for sale sign in, yes.
So do we need a motion or just a
If
consensus?
there's a consensus to approve a request to participate in the sidewalk program, $2 a square foot, do you know what the
Reimbursement.
reimbursement? And Bob has to inspect it before that, and then, do you know how much approximately the $2 would,
Oh,
Amount
it's
to?
4 foot by 75 foot.
4 inches thick, or you don't go by the thickness, you go by,
No,
okay.
square foot would be like 300, or, well, 4 foot times
That should be 300 square feet.
300. There's 2, 600.
$600?
Approximately.
Do we have a consensus to approve that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's approved. And do you want to talk about the,
Yeah, so, last meeting, we talked about the, curb and gutter and sidewalk that was, requested to be replaced in front of the post office. And, so, these are the quotes, the two from Ornell and Devader. And then, I think Richard was gonna see about the.
Yeah, I did, and, because of the location and the fact that you've got the post office there and the business right there, it was kind of considered that since we would probably not be able to get in there and do it quite as efficiently as a business was, it was maybe let's kind of look at the sidewalk project for something else possibly. And so anyway, that was kind of the way it fell out. So a no-go on that.
So your quotes
Sorry, a
include,
no-go on what?
I know go on the volunteer sidewalk park project
Oh,
for
gotcha.
this particular one because it's of its location.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
I guess I don't, first of all, it looks like you do the removal, like
Yes.
you tear it up in both cases.
Yes.
And I don't, on the Devader concrete, I'm not,
Are they both bidding the same thing?
Yeah, it's not
that's
clear
my
that there's
question.
a correspond, that it's exactly the same thing.
So,
Debater sits
You go-
on the last one's, I mean, I think he's saying city will tear out and provide sub-base
There you go.
something.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, since they're talking in different ways, I assume that you're confident it's the same length, it's,
670.
they're using.
That's the same amount though.
And
The ornamental concrete is talking for sure about,
Sub-base.
you know, forms and reinforced. Same, I just don't, how can we be sure it's the same level of,
Well, I met with them, both of them on site, and, we walked through it, and this portion, this, it's just 130 feet curb and gutter, and, they measured it with their tools also.
So are you confident then, Bob, that they're both bidding the same project or roughly the same project?
Yes.
and up to the same standard of strength, I guess is my,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, okay.
there'd be just reinforced wire in there too. The driveway, there's a driveway that goes into the post office, and that would be 6-inch, all driveways.
same specs, in other words. Okay.
And that number for Debater is 14,567?
Yes.
Right.
The business there, the insurance business, they felt as if they didn't wanna participate because their sidewalk is in fine shape, which it is. It doesn't need to be replaced, but, and it's not very much either, like 20 feet in front of their building.
So, do I have a motion to, I mean, do you have any other questions?
Debaters does include, ornamental has American families, should that be taken out?
That should be removed, because we will not do that sidewalk.
So that means that's $1,300 cheaper.
Yes.
1,300 cheaper, is that what you said?
Okay, well, that changes things.
Yeah, that does, I didn't.
That gives them money.
But the
for-
debater, so his doesn't include that, the debate, it's just the postage,
Correct.
so it is a different. Do we need to verify that before
Well,
because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this debater one I just got today, this afternoon.
late this afternoon.
So did Diener know that the park in front of American Family was not gonna be done?
Well,
Yeah, so I guess the trick now is technically they didn't really bid the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
So can we just say, okay, we'll take 1296 off Tom's and so is it lower, or do we have to go
Well,
back?
if you can eliminate, is it itemized here in a way that you can just remove it from the bid here
I'd
tonight?
say so, if we're not gonna do that portion, or if she doesn't wanna.
That's
I
oftentimes,
guess it all depends, are we gonna bill, is the business owner gonna pay for a portion of this, are we gonna do a reimbursement, or are we just gonna pay for it all? Cause like, the American Family business, she's like, well, if the city's paid for it, yeah, okay, but I don't wanna participate or pay for my sidewalk to be.
Well, what are the others doing? Cause they're supposed to do it, right? And then we reimburse them
$2.
the $2 per,
Square foot.
The insurance, VSAC insurance on the corner there is willing to work with whatever way to get it replaced. And, the post office, she would like the sidewalk, done professionally, just because it's a high traffic volume area.
that's fine, but is she willing to pay?
I didn't really get that out of her.
Oh.
I don't know.
So-
She thinks the city should pay for it, but it's not.
We got two different issues here then. We got businesses who are responsible for
Right.
this that aren't willing to pay, or it sounds like
One of them is.
one of them's willing, well,
one of them has sidewalk that isn't needing repair.
yeah, so
Yeah,
take American Family out of the equation.
Yeah.
REZAC is willing
Work, whatever.
to do whatever he has to So he would be willing to pay his portion.
Yeah.
But the post office is not.
Well,
We didn't get a specific.
Yeah, we didn't get a
He doesn't
specific-
have to, it sounds like.
Or is the post office, I guess I should say.
Right, so what is our capacity to compel
Thank you.
someone to
Well,
replace?
you can order it done or whatever, but
This is a public access, kind of important.
correct, I mean, you can pay for it all, you can,
Wouldn't we
Cost
demand
share.
that,
the statutes require the property owners to maintain them,
And if a property owner doesn't maintain
Well, then
them,
the
we give
government
them warning.
give them notice, I think, but I just say that there's been in recent years a lot of sidewalks provided by the city. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying it makes it more difficult to try to enforce something like that.
So past commissions just said, yeah, we'll pay for it?
Certain sidewalks, yes. So I think what we need to do, the bids are, hey, I would carry it over to the next meeting. Bob, I'd have you talk with everybody, get everything squared away, especially on this other one, and we'll come back. No one gets to change their bids other than if they subtract that from American Family. We can see how the post office owner, building owner, wants to participate and handle it then. And then, cause I was gonna ask, will we charge this a sales tax, is that what this is?
I don't know.
In the fund that is, yeah. So,
We did do that with Second Street, didn't we?
Yes, that was charged to sales tax.
Second Street, Main Street, down the, well, I don't.
So we set up the precedent.
Well, other precedents can be set, but I'm just saying it's, something to keep in mind,
well,
so we'll carry it over.
Well, yeah, I mean, carry over the bid, however, I mean, while we're talking about it, I mean, so what we're doing is we're, by setting this precedent in the past, and, you know, we did it with Second Street, I guess I should have been educated myself a little more, is we're asking all of the people of St. Mary's to pay for certain people's problems. I don't wanna do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the guy we just approved this for, paying for it in front of his house.
Well, that's a program though, that was adopted, that's in, that's
So what's the difference between his scenario and this scenario?
The scenario here is-
Commercial and residential, they're different.
They could apply for that same $2 a square foot and participate.
And bring this price down a little bit, which is fine, but like in the case of Second Street, nobody applied, we just paid for it. We put that burden on everyone to pay for their sidewalks.
But Bob could tell the post office or the property owner that the city does have this program. So that's open to everyone, and that's
We could
policy.
we could just do our portion, the curb and gutter, and then say, okay, but the rest is on you guys, you know.
But we'll come back with information from the property owner and see if she wants to participate.
we own the curb and the gutter, and we own the curb and the gutter, and they own the sidewalk.
Correct.
Yeah.
Curb and gutter, part of the street.
I mean, I don't wanna belabor this, but
Where did this come from? The idea that the owner of the property owns the sidewalk.
Statutes.
Is that like a state thing?
It's a state statute.
Hmm.
Although I'll tell you, it's quite, not in this town, it's quite controversial. I believe the city of Lawrence is taking steps so that the city maintains all.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not looking to pay extra money, but in a way, it is a public, what if you don't wanna have a sidewalk in front of your house? You have to.
If you're ordered to do so,
It's like the snow removal. It's their sidewalk, they're required to remove the snow. Well, my thing is, I don't wanna belabor this either, but, I mean, yeah, I think we need to stop putting this burden, if the statute is such that they own the sidewalk, and now if they wanna get that statute changed, go for it. But if that's the statute, then they should be paying for it, and if we do reimburse them for a portion of it, that's fine. I would let them know that, but we're not paying for it. I think those days need to stop.
so that's, I guess what the order is here is to check with the property owner, see if they're willing to participate, and if not, they get the whole thing.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
That could be fun.
The next two items are related. Item D, ordinance number 1339 adopting the 2023 Uniform Public Offense Code. And I guess we have to do the one at a time, but the other is the uniform, or the standard traffic ordinance. So they're here, by the way.
In the packet, there was a
The
article
critical things,
about the
what changed.
proposed changes, or the actual changes to those books over the ones that were adopted last year.
And so I looked over that. Interesting. Criminal hunting, who knew? Some people make airbags, counterfeit airbag violence.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if you had a chance to look over them. There's nothing that they're kind of weird rules in some cases, but I don't see them. This is an annual thing.
So do you not adopt them?
If you don't adopt them, then the current one they have remains in effect.
Do we wanna ban neon brown lighting?
Well, no, we can't, that's already allowed. It was only neon before, now they can have different colors other than red or flashing lights. So that gives you opportunity,
Ready.
Nate. Do even more with that thing. I don't know if there's any concern, otherwise I would be happy to.
You wanna start with 1339?
Yeah, 1339, do I have a motion to adopt the 2023 Uniform Public Offense Code as presented?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is passed. We are adopting ordinance, the Uniform Public Offense Code as presented. So the next item is the similar ordinance 1340 adopting the 2023 Standard Traffic Ordinance. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 1340 adopting the 2023 Standard Traffic Ordinance as presented?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? So those are both those ordinances are approved.
Could you tell me who voted first and second?
Gerard and Richard in both cases.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Made the motion.
I didn't mean to take away.
I made the motion.
Yeah, I was looking for my medals. Alright, so, thank you.
Make sure that you make special reference to him in the golf course discussion as well, because he wants to, he just wants to make sure he shows up in the minutes.
So the minutes aren't a transcript, and the minutes aren't newspaper articles, they're supposed to record the actions taken. You don't wanna make them so sterile, you couldn't tell what happened, but, no quotes.
Let's hear it.
We spent an hour on that, there better be quotes.
I had, in Minnesota, I summarized a 3-hour meeting in 2 sentences.
But didn't they used to, I think at one time our city minutes were very long.
And they'd be more descriptive, they'd say like, so-and-so stepped up to the podium, and, that's what, and I'm not,
The grim look.
the minutes are the purview of each governing body, they're in there what you
Keep
want
them
to.
concise, clear and courteous.
The last item on the agenda for tonight is the 2024 refuse bid solicitation, which we've talked about a number of times. The last thing we wanted was for the city attorney to look it over, which he did. There were no concerns, and what is or will be posted online is the first paragraph.
Well, so the first paragraph, and then there's a link to the rest of it.
Right.
But I was gonna say, if we were gonna publish it in the newspaper, it would just be that first paragraph there. And then it would link to the smks.info/bid. But also, look at the time frame. That's something you could review. I would issue it tomorrow, the bids would be due in about a month, to be opened at the 21st. So we'd have the due date the day before the opening, not the Friday before, so they could be here if they wanted to. And then I think the contract would end at the end of February, so there'd be some time. The packet, I was asked why the resolution showing the fees were put in there. It's a public document. If it's not in there, they'll ask for it. cities are pretty much the same across the state, so you're gonna be asked for that information, I just thought I'd put it in there. And then, so we will publish it on the website, Facebook, all those places, potentially the newspaper. And then also, maybe we have a list of trash providers from other cities. We may solicit them directly so that they don't miss the notice, you know, so we get some participants.
So the term's just for a year, or will cities come back and say, hey, if we do a 2-year contract, we can give you better pricing or whatever?
Everything's open,
It's open.
yeah,
We didn't demand we're looking for services, not a term, right?
Well, looking for the thing.
the contract shows it as 1 year, because that's the one we're operating
Got
under.
it, okay.
So they'd have, it says something similar to what's in place now, but if it's good enough and they're willing to do it for multiple years, why not? You know? But anyway, the city attorney, Bernard, did not have any problems with the way he worded it.
So do we need a motion to approve this solicitation?
If there's a consensus to have me move forward with this and how I described, I'll do it.
Do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes, please move forward with that bid solicitation. I'm sorry to report, Richard, that I see no other items and I don't even, unless there are any reports, Maurice.
I do.
It goes on.
Go ahead, Maurice.
Even though I was talking about publishing this in the paper, the city could adopt a charter ordinance that would require, which would eliminate the requirement of putting in the paper, you declare the city's website as the official newspaper. Doesn't mean you can't use the newspaper, and in some cases you'd be required to still use it. The city attorney gave me the document, he helped another town do it. I think it's worth considering. Although we don't do a lot of newspaper advertising, it would be helpful in that we don't have to wait to start the days coinciding with their publication date. A bad part is if you read a newspaper article I included, you know, some people tamper with stuff, or I would still say some of the more important things, whether they're required to or not, should go to the paper, because it'd be a permanent record, and, you know, it'd be cover, because the website's fine and all, but, you know, that sort of stuff,
So
so,
what would you like to do as the city manager? Because
Well,
I'm fairly indifferent.
do what?
What would you like to do?
I
don't
think
know
we
if
should
I-
consider adopting the ordinance to do it for convenience in certain cases. So if we have a meeting tonight, I could have a notice tomorrow, and it could be published the next day. And as opposed to waiting until the next Thursday rolls around and then counting, a lot of the public, so the budget stuff has to be 10 days. The public hearings for zoning have to be 20 days advertised, and then
So
that way-
by process, we would remove a constraint, but we could still do everything in the paper if we wanted to.
we still could, and we may have, in some of those cases, you may have to, the budget thing, the budget notices may still have to be published. The city attorney would have to review every time I would do that, he would just say, it need to be published, and once we find out what did and didn't, you know.
Okay, so then does that put an additional administrative so what I'm trying to do is figure out what is the thing that removes any kind of burdens,
The burden is there's certain timeframes that can start sooner.
but is that gonna put you in a spot where you have to do a second check and we might miss something and run afoul of some rule? And if we just left it with the paper, then even though there'd be delays, it would be more prudent. You know, see what I'm saying?
Well, the mistakes will be made either way. In the budget notice I published this year, what I left off the top of it was, this notice was published on such and such day. Even though it's in a paper and I have the date that it was published, it has to be on top of the ad. Now, the newspaper people used to have people we talked to, and they would fix that for you if you forget it. This time to meet the state requirement, we had to go into the system, the paper system, and pull out the ad and get an affidavit. Okay, so that's how I covered myself this time, but, so what I'm saying is they're not gonna eliminate mistakes, because they're still being made. But, I'm fine if you don't take any action either.
So what would, can we take action tonight on something?
Well, if you direct me to get the ordinance and resolution in shape, to attorney review it, and you can consider it later in the year.
Personally, I don't see any strong reason to remain tied to a newspaper in this day and age, especially if it delays things.
in some cases, we may still have to use it.
Sure, but if we don't wanna limit ourselves unnecessarily if we're on a timeline.
Well, because you could do both, you could do it on the website and start the clock ticking, and would still do the newspaper one that would satisfy, but like I said, we don't really do a lot of advertising. I sent a newspaper article around from another city, and that city said they were spending $8,000 a year in advertisements. So we don't approach that at all. So anyway,
So you all right if I direct Maurice to proceed with?
Yeah, let's do it.
so also the Armory application for alcohol, that Rule 102 that was mentioned at the last meeting, we could remove that and make that no longer a problem or an issue for people to deal with. I've never known it not to be waived ever since, and it wasn't that it wouldn't ever be waived. It's just that the commission at the time wanted to have input on what happened there. I'm not sure if that's still the same sentiment or not. You can direct me.
All the laws
You could do
still.
the opposite. They have to apply it to not have alcohol.
You need a compelling reason.
Well, so another, on that same point, we used to require event insurance for certain events at the Armory. And since there's been so many requests to lift the cereal malt beverage restrictions at the park, maybe we could consider reinstating the event insurance. Our city attorney says some homeowners policies include it, not all, some, but people get it for their wedding receptions and it's not that expensive. It's an extra layer of protection. We've not had any incidences that I'm aware of, but.
How much, I mean,
I would look into that and
Yeah.
come back with quotes.
for a wedding reception, things like that, that's fine. I wouldn't wanna burden, if we're gonna let people come in and, to do something for a fundraiser for, a nonprofit or, to help.
You understood, but I'm thinking more like a 24-hour softball tournament that involves alcohol.
That would never-
Yeah.
We should
okay.
maybe do that.
Yeah, I agree.
The Armory part of it, because we would want to exclude like the chess club, right? We wouldn't want to have them do that, but anyway, I'll look into it and bring some examples back. That's all I have.
Lift station and sewer upgrade, where are we,
So when Pat Cox was here a couple weeks ago, he said that the waters of the US ruling by the Supreme Court kind of threw things in, so there wasn't a clear direction. They're still working on the sewer plant thing, whatever.
but the lift station, I know we've talked about doing those together, and that would probably be the most feasible option, but, isn't that something that, from everything I've been hearing,
I agree,
it would need, at least the lift station portion needs to get done.
I agree.
It's the old kicking it down the road again, is what it sounded like, and I don't.
Well, I don't know, it's not kicking it down the road, it's just that it's a difficult environment to even get second bids on things, Pat was saying, Pat talked to PG and all of that, and since that's a small project, it would increase the cost potentially, and, but I don't disagree, I 3 or 4 meetings ago, I made the same comment.
Right.
But it's another one of these hurry up and wait situations.
When's the library lease up?
So, like at the end of the year, so it's on the next agenda.
Okay, good. I don't wanna go through that again.
Well, so at the last meeting, they were present and discussed the library lease and,
They were here, but he quit.
They left, Sameka's left.
I don't know if he wanted to, we have a letter here, and we have Gerard as a liaison, so.
yeah, that's just,
The liaison to the library board.
So what's your?
I mean, I-
We get the crowd in early.
they wanted it because they don't meet in December, the library board, but they, their main library, not the advisory committee, but their main library board doesn't meet in December, so they wanted it sooner, so that's another reason, but one of the members also told me that they just want it more than 3 days' notice.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be.
The next agenda.
We'll have the lease for review before the meeting.
It'll be in the packet, I can send it out whenever
So
you want.
we decided, did we raise it some percent?
Okay, so when you did that, that was past their deadline for
Right.
request for the budget, it's worth talking about again. Hey, also in the packet is resolution 920, that was put together in 2020, and that allows city staff to adjust water leaks under certain circumstances, certain gallons, as long as they provide, so we first person used it, So I put that in your packet so that you can see. Anything over 100,000 gallons has to be taken to the city commission and that sort of stuff. So that was the first time that was being used. And that's all I have.
All right, Richard,
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Live stream gone yet?